Hello everyone. Today we will discuss the topic of irreversible injury. All of you know that if the injury is persist or the ischemia or hypoxia is persist, it will lead to irreversible damage to the structure and function of the cell. But the exact point at which you can designate that it is a reversible injury or the retrogressive injury and it is an irreversible injury, it is not clear. Two essential phenomena which distinguish irreversible injury from the retrogressive injury are as follows. First is the inability of the cell to reverse the mitochondrial dysfunction on reperfusion or reoxygenation, and second is disturbance in the cell membrane function and the plasma membrane function. So these two are very important as far as the point to distinguish from the irreversible to the retrogressive injury is concerned. Cell membrane function and mitochondrial function should be compromised when you labeled it as an irreversible injury. Now, causes of irreversible injury, as we see in case of the reversible injury, almost same. For example, oxygen deprivation, physical agents like trauma, burns, chemical agents, drugs, infectious agents, immunological reactions, genetic rearrangement, and nutritional deficiency. Principle are again same as we see in the case of the retrogressive injury. That the injury always depends on the type of the injury, duration of the injury, and severity of the injury. Also, it depends on the particular cell which vulnerable to the injury, the type of the cell, the state of the cell, and the adaptability of that particular cell to that particular type of injury. So these two things are similar to that of the retrogressive injury. Now, similar to the cell injury retrogressive type, here in the irreversible, again the target are same. Cell membrane integrity is disturbed, mitochondrial function is deprived, cytoskeleton is disturbed, and cellular DNA get rearranged. And this all leads to the structural and biochemical rearrangement in the cell. So these are the target in case of irreversible cell injury, like that, similar to that in case of the retrogressive injury. Now, what is a molecular mechanism that occur in case of irreversible injury? That we already see in the first slide that two phenomena is very important. One is the mitochondrial rearrangement and second is the integrity of the cell membrane is disturbed to a severe level. So what do you mean by mitochondrial dysfunction? Because of the continuous hypoxia, there is a large cytosolic influx of calcium and which is taken up by the mitochondria, and this will lead to the rearrangement of the function of the mitochondria. And what happened in case of membrane? So two most important events which occur in the irreversible injury are the increased cytosolic calcium activate phospholipase which degrade the membrane phospholipid. Because of that, the integrity of the cell membrane is disturbed, and decreased replacement synthesis of membrane phospholipase due to the reduced level of ATP. Because the mitochondrial function is already disturbed, so there is reduced ATP is available. So there is a decreased availability of the phospholipid for the replacement of the membrane which is damaged already. Now there is a cytoskeletal damage in which normal intermediate filament damage due to the activated intracellular protease and due to physical effect of the cell swelling. There is also free radicals which is produced by the polymorphs and during the reperfusion, and this all leads to the disturbance of the intracellular mechanism, biochemical as well as the cytochemical. So, mitochondrial dysfunction and membrane dysfunction are responsible for the main effect of the irreversible cell injury. There is also a role of hydrolytic enzyme. For example, damage to the lysosomes leads to liberation of the hydrolytic enzymes, and that on activation leads to enzymatic digestion of the cell component itself. So there is a nuclear change with the cell deaths. So there is also a role of this type of hydrolytic enzyme when there is a severe injury to the cell. This again a diagram will represent which is already discussed in case of the reversible injury, that ultimately these three things will lead to, for example, that's membrane damage and mitochondrial swelling. These two are mainly responsible for the ultimately cell death or massive injury to the cell structure. We just revised the biggest changes that we already studied in case of reversible injury as that will proceed to the level of irreversible. For example, mild ischemia will lead to the reduced oxidative phosphorylation and there is a reduced ATP generation and there is a failure of the sodium pump and there is an influx of the sodium and water. And because of that, there is organelle and cellular swelling. Up to that, there is a change are always reversible up to the cellular swelling. Now, because of the severe and prolonged ischemia, severe swelling of the mitochondria, calcium influx into the mitochondria and into the cell with rupture of the lysosomes and plasma membrane. And there is a death by necrosis and apoptosis due to the release of cytochrome C from the mitochondria. So we see the morphology of the irreversible injury that occur. First is the local or focal changes, that is autolysis, necrosis, and apoptosis. And there is a change in the that follow this autolysis and necrosis are the ganglion and calcification. And usually it is a end life result of the end life, and that is a somatic death. And what do you know autolysis? It is a digestion of the cell by its own enzyme, which is liberated by the lysosome. And it's occur in the living body associated with the inflammation. So ultimate fate of the irreversible injury is the necrosis and apoptosis. First we discuss the necrosis. Necrosis is defined as cell death along with degradation of the cell tissue by hydrolytic enzyme which is liberated by cell accompanied by the inflammatory reaction. There are two essential changes there. One is the cell digestion and second is the denaturation of the protein. There are five types of necrosis. First, we discuss the cognitive necrosis, which is the most common type of and which is result from the hypoxia. An example is except hypoxia, except the organ which because of the hypoxia necrosis occur in the brain. It is not of coagulative type, but it is a liquefactive. So it is an exception. Otherwise, all the tissue which are having an injury because of the hypoxia, they are showing the cognitive type of necrosis. So this is the example of cognitive necrosis. And this is a typical pattern with ischemia infarction. You can see the loss of blood supply and there is a resultant anoxia of the tissue. There is a wedge-shaped area, pale area. You can see here. It shows the cognitive necrosis in the renal cortex of the kidney. Grossly, if you see that type of organ, they are in the early stage they appear pale, firm, slightly swollen, and with progress they become yellow, soft, and shrunken. And microscopically, if you see, the hallmark is the conversion of normal cell into a tombstone-like appearance. And there is a necrosed cell is swollen more eosinophilic with the nuclear changes like pycnosis, sterolysis, and paralysis. You can see in that. And finally, the necrosed focus infiltrated by the inflammatory cell and phagocytosed by the macrophage, leaving the granular debris and fragment of the cell. So these are the microscopic changes that you can see in the case of cognitive necrosis. Most common cause is the hypoxia. This is the microscopic feature. You can see a cognitive necrosis in the kidney glomerulus. The second type of necrosis is the liquefactive necrosis. Commonly after the bacterial and fungal infection, but it occur in the brain and it is due to hypoxia. I told you in the previous one that in all other organs except brain, due to hypoxia, the necrosis of the coagulative type, but in the brain it is of liquefactive types. Grossly, the affected area is soft with liquefied center containing necrotic debris and the cyst wall is formed afterwards. Microscopically, you can see cystic space containing necrotic debris, macrophage, phagocytosed material, and the cyst wall is formed by the proliferation of fibroblasts in the abscess, while by the proliferating capillaries and glial cell in case of brain. So this is the morphology microscopic appearance in the case of liquefactive necrosis. Most common cause of liquefactive necrosis, again I am telling you, hypoxia in the brain. Here you can see there is a small abscess filled with neutrophil, and it is a localized leukoprotein necrosis in case of liver abscess. You can see the coagulative and leukoprotein necrosis, a kidney infarct exhibiting coagulative necrosis with loss of nuclear and clumping of the cytoplasm, with preservation of the basic outline of the glomerular and tubular architecture. In slide B, you can see a focus of leukoprotein necrosis in the kidney caused by the fungal infection, and the focus is filled with white cell and cellular debris, creating a renal abscesses that obliterates the normal architecture. So here there is in the coagulative one you can see a preservation of normal architecture to some extent, but here almost complete loss of the architecture is there. Now third type of necrosis is the caseous necrosis. Caseous means chasing, and it occurs typically in the tuberculous infection. The combined feature of coagulative and lymphatic necrosis you can see in case of caseous necrosis. Grossly, the tissue resembles dry, cheesy, and are soft, granular, and yellowish. And it is due to the histotoxic effect of the lipopolysaccharides present in the capsule of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And microscopically, if you see, there is a structureless eosinophilic containing granular debris, and it is surrounding tissue shows the granular inflammatory reaction. So it is typically the example of caseous necrosis is tuberous granuloma that show the caseous necrosis. There is a gross figure of lung. You can see caseous necrosis with cheesy 10 granulometer in the upper portion of the lung in the patient got tuberculous inflammation. These all are the cheesy area. This is the gross appearance of caseous necrosis in hilar lymph node infected with the tuberculous lesion. The node has a cheesy tan to white appearance. Caseous necrosis is really just a combination of coagulative and lymphatic necrosis, as I told you, and it is the most characteristic of granulomatous inflammation. So whenever the granulomatous lesion is there, you find a caseous type of necrosis. So it is a hilar lymph node showing a caseous necrosis. Pink homogeneous structureless substance you can see. So it is a necrosed material. Now fourth type of necrosis is the fat necrosis. It is a special form of cell death occur at two different locations with similar morphology. Example, acute pancreatic necrosis and traumatic fat necrosis in breast. Here in the fat necrosis, what happened? The neutral fat is hydrolyzed. So there is a cholesterol and fatty acid liberated, and they leak out and they give a cloudy appearance in the background. So if you see the gross appearance in case of fat necrosis, it is a yellowish white firm deposit, and with the calcium, if it is not complicated, you can also find a calcium in that with a firm and chalky white appearance. Microscopically, there is a cloudy appearance surrounded by inflammatory reaction. And there is a dirty background, forming macrophage, lymphocyte, and foreign body type of giant cell you can form. And calcium deposits sometimes it also present, and it gives an amorphous granular basophilic material like appearance. So fat necrosis, most common example, traumatic fat necrosis in the breast, and in case of acute pancreatitis, you can find a necrosis in the pancreatic tissue, that is a fat necrosis type. It's a fat necrosis of pancreas, cellular injury. It leads to because of the release of powerful enzymes which damage the fat by the production of soap, and this appear grossly as a soft chalky white area seen on the gut surfaces. You can see here chalky white areas here. Now, fifth type of necrosis is the fibrin necrosis. It is characterized by deposition of fibrin-like material and often accompanied by immunological injury. Example is arterial hypertension and peptic ulcer. Microscopically, you can identify brightly eosinophilic highlight-like deposition in the vessel wall or in the luminal surface of a peptic ulcer. So typically, you can find it in the immunological conditions. Here you can see a fibrinoid necrosis, thickened area and necrosed part. Here also you can see a necrosis. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the irreversible injury. You can see in the above portion there is a normal cell. Up to this type of changes, it is a reversible one. I told you that the exact point is still not defined. But once the mitochondrial and membrane function is compromised, it will undergo an irreversible changes. So these all are the irreversible changes. And ultimately, the fate is necrosis, the death of the cell by necrosis. And the typical features of necrosis are pycnosis, karyorrhexis, karyolysis, and myelin figure formation. So these are the diagrammatic representation of reversible injury and irreversible injury and ultimate fate of the. Now apoptosis. Before going to the apoptosis, we just go through the summary of the ischemic injury again. That severe and prolonged ischemia lead to severe swelling of the mitochondria, calcium influx into the mitochondria and into the cell with rupture of lysosome and plasma membrane and death by the necrosis and apoptosis due to the release of cytochrome 3 from the mitochondria. So here there is a two type of death mode. One is a necrosis and one is the apoptosis. Both are death of the tissue, but one is follows the usual cell death. Otherwise, the apoptosis is the programmed cell death. And after this injury, there may be reperfusion injury which follows the blood flow into the ischemic area, and it is caused by the oxidative stress due to the release of free radicals from the leukocyte and the endothelial cell. And blood brings the calcium that overloads reversibly into the injured cell with a consequently mitochondrial injury. So, if there is a reperfusion is there in the ischemic area, there is a chances of reperfusion injury is there because of the liberation of the free radicals. And there is a local activation of the complement by the IgM antibody deposited in the ischemic tissue also. The chemicals also may lead to the injury directly by or conversion into the toxic metabolites. And the organs chiefly affected are those involved in the absorption or excretion of the chemicals or others such as liver, whereas the chemicals are converted to toxic metabolites. So, usually the chemical injury are more reflected in this type of organ where it is the metabolism is take place, for example, liver. Direct injury to the critical organs such as the mitochondria or indirect injury from the free radicals generated from the chemicals or toxin is involved mainly in this type of injury. So now we go to the second type of death mode, that is a apoptosis. I told you that it is a programmed cell death. So it is a definition is it is coordinated and internally programmed cell death. It is a Greek word. The name is falling, meaning it is falling off. It is characterized by involvement of single cell or small cluster in variable background with absence of inflammatory response. The apoptotic cells are round to oval shrunken mass with intensely eosinophil cytoplasm and condensed fragmented nuclear chromatin. There is a convolution of cell membrane with formation of membrane-bound spherical bodies or the blebs which contain the compact organelle and is called as a apoptotic bodies. Now, what are the causes of apoptosis? Apoptosis is a physiological situation. It is a programmed destruction of cells during the embryogenesis. These are the physiological causes. It may be pathological. So first we discuss the physiological situation. So first is the programmed destruction during the cell age, during the embryogenesis. Second is the involution of hormone-dependent tissue upon the hormone withdrawal. Cell loss in the proliferating cell population. and elimination of the potentially harmful self-reactive lymphocyte. So this is the cause of physiological apoptosis. Now, apoptosis in the pathological conditions are when there is a DNA damage due to radiation, cytotoxic or anti-cancer drugs, and hypoxia that leads to the damage to DNA, either directly or via the production of free radicals. Cell death in response to the injurious agents involved in the necrosis. Cell death in certain infection, particularly in the viral infection. Pathological atrophy in parenchymal organ after the duct obstruction or on the withdrawal of the stimuli. There can be cytotoxic T cell lymphocyte mediated apoptosis, and also you can find apoptosis in degenerative diseases of central nervous system. Now, what is the morphology of in case of apoptosis? It is different from that of the necrosis. Here, there is a cell shrinkage is there. There is a chromatin condensation is there, which is a most characteristic feature. There is a formation of cytoplasmic bleb and apoptotic body. There is a phagocytosis of apoptotic cell of the bodies by the macrophage, and initially the plasma membrane remained intact in case of apoptosis, while it is not there in case of necrosis. And in the last stage, it becomes permeable in case of apoptosis. Histologically, if you stain, it shows that apoptosis involves single cell or the cluster of cell. Apoptosis cell appear round to oval mass, intensely eosinophilic of cytoplasm, and dense nuclear chromatin fragment. There could be cell shrinkage, formation of apoptotic body, which are rapid, and there are fragments and quickly phagocytosed in contrast to that of the necrosis. Apoptosis does not elicit inflammation, as here I told you that the cell membrane is intact in the initial stage. It is almost become permeable in the very last stage. Always the apoptosis is never elicit the inflammation, as contrast to that in case of necrosis. That necrosis is always accompanied by the surrounding inflammation. Biochemical features, mainly in case of apoptosis, is the protein cleavage activation of several membrane of the cysteine protease named caspases, and DNA background. So, there is a background of DNA into a 50 to 100 K base pieces, and subsequently there is an intranucleosomal cleavage of the DNA to the oligonucleosome by the calcium and magnesium dependent endonucleases, which is visualized by the agarose gel electrophoresis. And there is also phagocytic recognition, apoptotic cell express phospholipids and thrombospondin on the surface. It can be identified with special dyes annexing 5. So these are the biochemical changes that occur in case of apoptosis. Now we just understood the apoptosis. We told that it is something different from the necrosis. So apoptosis is usually mediated by two mechanisms. One is the signaling pathway, that is transmembrane signal by hormone and cytokines, and intracellular signaling, that is via heat and viral infection. It is usually controlled by an integration. It is an integrative stage, usually controlled by the adaptor protein BCL2, P53, and coenzyme B. These all are the anti-apoptotic factors. There is a second phase, is the execution phase. Here there is an endonuclease activation, and there is a catabolism of the cytoskeleton. And lastly, there is a removal of the dead cell. So first we understood the intrinsic pathway of the apoptosis. So it is mediated by the mitochondria. So it is a mitochondrial pathway and is a major mechanism of apoptosis. In this pathway, apoptosis is a result of the increased mitochondrial permeability and release of the pro-apoptotic molecules. The mitochondria are a remarkable molecule in that they contain cytochrome C, which is essential for the life. But when released into the cytoplasm, they initiate the suicide program of the apoptosis. So it is a programmed cell death. The release of this mitochondrial protein is controlled by the finely orchestrated balance between the pro and anti-apoptotic members of the BCL family of the protein. So in the intrinsic pathway, all this drama is maintained by the controlled by the mitochondria and the release protein from that. Cytochrome C is the main culprit in the possession of all the changes in the apoptosis. The growth factor and others are a signal which stimulate the production of anti-apoptotic protein, mainly are BCL2, BCLX and MCL1. When the cells are deprived of survival signal or their DNA is damaged, these are activated. And the sensor are also the members of the BCL family. And they include the proteins called beam, bead and band. These are the three proteins which are the apoptotic protein. And they are called, and the sensor itself activates the bags and band, which forms the oligomer that insert into the mitochondrial membrane and create a channel. So this beam, bead and band activate this bags and band protein, and they open the channels in the mitochondria, and they allow the protein from the inner mitochondrial membrane to leak out into the cytoplasm. The net effect is the back activation coupled with the loss of protective function of the anti-apoptotic BCL family members. So, because of the this and apoptotic factors, BX and BAC, they will cause the release of cytochrome C into the cytoplasm, and all the apoptotic processes get forwarded. So once released in the cytosol, the cytochrome C is bound to a protein called MPF1, and which forms a wheel-like hexamer that has been called the apoptosome. This complex is able to bind caspase-9 molecule and thus setting into the auto-amplification process. So here the apoptotic process is ended by the mitochondrial pathway, which is directed by the mitochondria, starting from the apoptotic factors, release of cytochrome C to the formation of apoptosome. The second pathway is the extrinsic pathway of the apoptosis. It is initiated by the engagement of the plasma membrane DET receptor on a variety of cells. The DET receptors are a membrane of tumor necrosis factor receptor family that contain a cytoplasmic domain involved in the protein-protein interaction. And best known DET receptor are the tumor necrosis factor receptor and related protein called FAS or the CD95. So these are the two receptors that mediate the extrinsic pathway of the apoptosis. The ligand for FAS is called FAS ligand, and this FAS-L is expressed on the T cell that recognize the self antigens and on some cytotoxic T lymphocytes. And when the FAS-L binds to the FAS, 3 or more molecules of the FAS are brought together, and the cytoplasmic that domain form a binding site for an adapter protein. And that also contain a DET domain, and it is called as the FADD or the FADD. The pathway can be inhibited by the protein called FLIP. So it is triggered by FADD and it is inhibited by the FLIP or the FLIP protein. This is a diagrammatic representation of all the discussion. We just go through again it. It is the intrinsic pathway. I have already discussed the mitochondrial pathway. Withdrawn of the growth factor and hormone. So from this mitochondria, there is a release of cytochrome C. And the regulators are BCL2 family membrane proteins. This P53 again is the anti-apoptotic. They will have a control over this release. But once there is a loss of growth factor, the control is gone and the cytochrome C will be degraded into the cytoplasm. This is a extrinsic pathway that I just described. There is a receptor ligand interaction, FAS and tumor necrosis factor. Once it is adapted, there is adapted proteins are released. They initiate the caspases, and there is the execution of the caspases, and it will lead to the endonuclease activation. So there is a DNA fragmentation. Also there is a background of cytoskeleton, and there is a formation of cytoplasmic bud. This is in case of extrinsic pathway. So this cytoplasmic bud then released from separated from cell and form a apoptotic body, which is phagocytosed by the scavenger system. So this is the two way of the apoptosis. One is the mitochondrial death pathway, and second is the extrinsic or the domain related death pathway. So intrinsic and extrinsic pathway of the apoptosis. So we just described from this what are the biochemical feature of apoptosis. Again, we just go through it. Activation of the caspases. Caspases family have a 10 members of initiator and execution caspases. Initiator caspases include caspase 8 and caspase 9, caspase 3 and caspase 6. They serve as an executioner. So initiator are 8 and 9 and 3 and 6 are executioner. The DNA protein background occur. There is an apoptotic cell exhibit a characteristic background of DNA into 50 to 100 kilobase. And subsequently, there is a cleavage of DNA by calcium and magnesium dependent endonucleases, which already discussed it out. Third is the membrane alteration and recognition by the phagocytes, the plasma membrane and apoptotic cell change in the way that promote the recognition of the dead cell of the by the phagocytes. These lipids are also detectable by binding of a protein called NXA5 that already we discussed in the biochemical property of the apoptosis. Now, very important things that you know that both the pathway necrosis and apoptosis are the death related pathway, but the biochemical morphological changes are very different in both of them. Apoptosis is a programmed cell death, while necrosis is the cell death along with the degradation of tissue by the hydrolytic enzyme. Apoptosis is physiological and pathological both, while necrosis is usual pathological, and there is mainly hypoxia and toxins are involved in that. In the apoptosis, there is no inflammatory reaction. High inflammatory reaction is always there in necrosis. The lysosome and other organelles are intact in case of apoptosis, while they are undergo background with the liberation of hydrolytic enzymes and on oncoprecursor gene. The genetic activation by proto-oncogenes and cytotoxic T-cell mediated RD cell killing is there in case of apoptosis, while in the necrosis, cell death is by ATP depletion, membrane damage and free radical injuries. Thank you.